Yep.
So I don't think that one was changed after our meeting, they've got the changes of posting lines, but they are in this next.
All right, it is 6:01. We'll get this meeting started officially. So first, I guess on our agenda is you, Carol, right? So, Andrea, I'll let you take over with this presentation. It's on page 8 of the documents that you guys received from. Yeah, that's what you received. Yeah, should give you everything you need. So page 8 is what we're gonna start with. And Andrea has her own as well, so without cheating.
All right, so the city bureau,
Or 9, I'm sorry. Did you do it 9?
Yeah.
Sorry. Too small print. Page 9.
as you're all familiar with, is 6 city parks, 80 acres, over 80 acres of parkland. We have over 200 programs or events that we host, and we have the youth center, which is in the front of our office building. The next page in our packet that I handed out shows our organizational chart, and it shows the salaries for next year based on contracts. Dennis Gallagher is listed there because he gets paid from the DPW's budget line.
Is that recording okay? It's too loud enough.
Nobody wants to.
Yeah, but it's recorded, so I just want to make sure the volume levels are good. The mic is on top.
Real quick, I found out that's not.
Well, okay. Just FYI. Oh, we need it.
Like, tonight we do.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Okay. So that shows our organizational chart. It's changed for the past few years. Jessica Billings is our account clerk. Nate Johnson and Cam Woodard are the new recreation supervisors, and Matt Marcy is the youth services specialist over at the youth center. Dennis and under him are our maintenance workers.
You want to explain the bottom?
So, yeah, I can do it now. With 3 guys, it's very hard to maintain the amount of parkland that we have. And there is money in our budget to hire an additional maintenance worker. So that's the bottom one right there. Based on the DPW's contract, the CSE union, the salary for next year would be 43,300. That's already in our budget, so it's not an additional cost.
So we absorbed that from some of the funding that we had last year. And changing duties and responsibilities, so we're able to allocate some of that.
And this, on the next page, this additional staff member will help with a lot of these projects, and we'll be able to get them done in the spring. So we have plans to replace the 2 backstops at Bowling 1 and 2 softball fields. And if you play softball, if you've seen them, you understand why they need to be replaced. The fencing along the 1st and 3rd baselines at Greg's Field, which is the baseball field at Bowling Park. It's rusted, it's bowed out, it needs to be replaced. PBR rents our field when they're here for the tournaments in Cortlandville. We want to make it look nice for them, and keep them coming back. The Beaudry basketball courts are the last ones in the city that need to be renovated. They have not been touched in probably 18 years or so. So the plan is to put new blacktop, court lines, glass backboards like we have at Dexter and Suggett. And then also we can put pickleball court lines on them. So we have 2 at Dexter and they're continuously used. Having 2 more over at Beaudry will be able to have some more games played. The new framework and tunnel turf at the batting cage will be installed. We'll need concrete work done for that. And then the installation of the Yeaman playground. So we purchased that. That's on order. Unfortunately, won't be here until probably late February. We'll be able to install it in the spring. And then paint the pavilions at Yeaman to match their bathhouse, which is the green color now. So those are the projects that we have coming up. Most of this will be paid with the Portlandville agreement money. So it's $83,780 this year, next year. get right into our first line, 7010, which is rec administration. One concern I have is you'll see the 5415 line. Our office cleaner used to be paid out of the 5100 line, which is the personnel line. We've contracted with Absolutely Clean. I think we went through 4 cleaners this year, trying to find somebody who would come into the office 3 days a week, clean, take the trash out. They would either not show up, we would quit, we'd have to come and go. Contracting with Absolutely Clean, we know they're gonna be there, we know they're gonna do a good job, they're here at City Hall, they did require. So we feel it's important to use them to maintain the office, and they also provide their own supplies, so we won't have to do that. I want to do questions when you get them instead of at the end. That way they're all fresh in your head. So does anybody have any questions on the 7010 line? You'll see the 5416 line, the travel, education and training is blue. What we did was each line that we have has a travel and education line. We just combined it into one. Makes more sense to have it in one area. And I have national certifications that require continuing education units. And starting January, we're gonna send our staff to more conferences. It's something that was never done. I think it's important to keep up with the latest trend in the parking tech field. So that's why we requested 5,000. We've got 5 staff who will be going to conferences, webinars, online trainings. Any questions with the 7010 line? We'll go ahead with the next 7110. You're already. So you'll see the first line right off the bat, 25,200 added. That's just moving from the next line to 7140 to this line. We have 3 summer maintenance workers, college kids that we have 5 that we hired. We had 2 in this line, 3 in the 7140. We just grouped them all together. Easier that way to keep track. So that 25,200 is not an additional dollar amount for asking for, it's just moving from one line to the other. The 5206 line is a combination of a couple lines, and Scott and I have had some good conversations about what needs to be done in the park to improve it, and I've added $20,000 to help that happen. The 5408 line is where the CSEA, our maintenance staff, their uniform or their clothing allowance is contracted. We have to give it to them. It's $475 for clothing and $125 for boots, so it's $600 each. And that's all in that 408 line of 3,500. Questions? 7140. You'll see the decrease, and it's actually a little less than 25,200. Heather was paid out of that line, but is moved to the 7010 line. So her salary is moved as well. We've added the 3 summer maintenance. Increased raises, minimum wage has gone up. So there's a slight variance. Our 5405 line is what we use for any and all equipment. We do our equipment bids in January, football helmets, lacrosse pads, anything that we need for any program, it comes out of this line. So, even if we just keep it at the 20,000 as this year instead of increasing to 24, but the cost of everything is going. So a football helmet that used to cost us $130 is now about $155.
Just an FYI. They were usable.
For 5 years, we get them recertified every year, but then after that, you can't. It's their safety, that's not, it's the, I did receive a grant for, from USA Lacrosse for 20 sets of boys youth lacrosse equipment. So helmets, the new chest protectors have to have a cardiac plate in them to prevent any injuries. Stick, gloves, and bullet. So that's a probably $9,000 savings right there for that grant. But we'll receive this month.
And those revenue lines we added to them, and that's where some of the savings are that we'll see that are encumbered.
So they're just gonna send the gear, they're not gonna send a check for us to buy it, but yeah. Any questions or regarding the next ones?
I got a question. So you requested for 2,035,000 requested, and then the mayor's budget was 261, but this is 25,000. That's all.
So that was the 3 maintenance staff that we moved to the other budget.
Okay.
So when we met, it was at 261, and then it just made more sense to put the money over, so it's like. The beaches and pools line, you'll see a big jump here in the lifeguard rates. So in June of this year, the governor increased lifeguard salaries by 34% in order to keep existing lifeguards and hire new ones, because there's such a shortage. Yep. But SUNY Portland and some areas around here have to follow as well. So in order to be competitive, we've gone through and our head guards will receive $20 an hour. The assistant head guards will receive 19 an hour, and then all other lifeguards will receive 18. Right now, the YW or the YM pays more than they pay. So we see our lifeguards working there as well. They don't get the hours we offer, but it takes them away from us when they could be at where.
We did a couple of situations this year where somebody got injured, they had to give them, we had to shut down one of the parks because we didn't have.
Yeah, they had a medical emergency in the chair, and we ended up having to close Goodwire for the rest of the day because we just didn't have the right staff to cover it.
Andrea, when you say, obviously, I know we need to keep these people, I understand all the theory, but are they guaranteed X amount of hours or what?
We don't guarantee their
They're
hours.
fine with that or?
Yeah, I mean, they get at least 30 hours a week. Some of them are getting more weighted. We've got a great staff and they're young. We hired them when they were juniors in high school. They're seniors, juniors in college, or freshmen in college now. So they've been with us. They know how we work. They know the facilities. I think it's
So
important.
they're dedicated and they don't care if they get a rain day or two.
Yeah.
That's all they ask.
And
Like a jump ship.
where do they get certified? So that's the other thing that we've been working on. Our aquatics director, we're gonna get her certified to recertify them. Right now, they go through either the YM, the YW, they find wherever they go to college, a class there and do it there. If we can do it all together, we know they're gonna go over the skills that we want them to have. It's just better peace of mind. We tried to hold swim lessons this year, unfortunately, it didn't happen. There were some issues with other organizations involved. We also want to certify our aquatics director as a WSI, which is a water safety instructor. So that we can provide our own swim lessons with our own lifeguards. Free of cost to the community like the Red Cross used to do. So their volunteers are still interested, we just can't offer that Red Cross title because they're not involved anymore. So we'll utilize their volunteers. The kids will still, learn the important strokes, the important swim lessons. We'll just be able to do that on our. That's smart plan. That's really smart plan. Absolutely clean. You see, we contracted with them again for the pool cleaning. Super important. Health department will come and inspect our bathroom facilities, our whole facility, make sure it's clean. If not, we have to close. So it's important to have.
Was our longest day without a sewer backup?
Don't choose that.
We had a lot.
I think 7 this year. And it was almost the same time that it happened. It was so, we don't know what it was. We were both there every time, trying to figure it out. Any questions with our beach and pool line? You'll see the next one is just a breakdown of how many days required open, how many days Yeeman is open, total cost for Yeeman lifeguards, total cost for wet wire, and then the programs we offer in their cost. Our Yeeman cleaner, he's been great. He's not a part of Absolutely Clean, but he is paid from the salary line, 500 line. He goes through, he cleans the grills, the picnic tables, and he's been awesome. So we plan on keeping him next year.
There's some great ones, the tables, the birds and everything.
Yeah. Yep. And then the next one is just the information on the lifeguard increase from the government. Youth programs is our youth center. So this used to be 3 different lines that we condensed just into this, and I'll explain as we go. Each year we get a grant from the Office of Child and Family Services to cover the staffing costs. Last year it was 27,000. For this year it was 27,000. Next year for 2023, we've already completed the application and it's 26,000. Not 27. So that grant goes to cover the cost of the youth center staff. We have a full-time staff member over there, but we don't require him to work every single month. We'll do different days. So we have that relief staff to come in. They help with field trips, they help with special events, they go to SU games, crunch games, and the relief staff would help with that. The operating equipment we combine, instead of having 2 different lines with that. All the 206 lines, and this is where all the money from the programming comes from. Anything they do comes from that line. The kitchen line was a. So it was a 7330. Now we've added it to the 7310. And a 5400 line. So this kitchen program last year served almost 1,200 meals, free meals to kids. Right now they're on track to do more this year. They have holiday dinners, Thanksgiving, Christmas. They do special events, after school lunch or after school dinners, back to school parties. They have bring families in. We utilize the fire department's pantry boxes that they've been donating, going on to donate when they're available, and that's been a huge help. Right now, we will 100% run that line to 0 this year. So the cost of food has increased. It was $4,500 last year. We asked to go $5,500 just because the cost of everything is up.
We received a $1,000 grant too from King
Yeah.
Sauber, so that put us at 5,500 this year. And we currently have $1,011.04 left, but we still have Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we'll definitely, get to do that.
So it's an important program. It's probably one of the most important programs they offer. To feed kids, you know, they go to school and they get breakfast and lunch, but they go home and they may not get dinner, so. They come to the youth center, they have a place to hang out, people to talk to, their friends, and are happy. And it's not just. Deli meat or whatever, I mean, they make like. Good meals, chicken and dumplings and stuff like that, so.
Andrea, just clarification, going back to the OCFS grant,
Yes,
2022 appropriation was 27,000,
yes,
and this, so 2023 is the 26,000,
yes.
so it's not 32. You're
So-
requesting 32.
Requesting 32 because we want to extend the summer hours. Right now, it's open 3 to 8. We feel it's important to add a couple extra hours during the summer, so 1 to 8. And then offer some meals for them at lunchtime. They do have the summer lunch program, but. If they already come to the youth center for a place to hang out, stay off the streets, stay out of trouble. You know, provide them with a lunch if possible. And then right now, there are no Saturday hours, so it's open Monday through Friday, 3 to 8. It's a great facility. Heather just got a grant for all new furniture. It's completely updated inside. And the attendance has grown. So why not open it on Saturday? It's been going 100%.
Is this strictly free, correct?
For,
Free is what we're in the- free living.
yes,
Yeah.
I think you
Well,
post it.
okay, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, okay. Oh, that's what was, I mean, city people only, or is it open up to everyone?
we see the majority city
Okay.
because the kids walk from high school down the hill.
Welcome, everyone, now.
Yeah. We don't turn anybody away. If they come and they need a meal, we're not gonna turn them away.
Well, you're strictly focusing towards your kids. No-
Yes.
No dog walking up,
Unless it's a family meal like the Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners.
well, you want to bring them.
Right, right. Yep. Any other questions with that line? So the 7320 is another youth center line. They use this for trips. Any field trip they take, we have to rent vehicles from Enterprise. So this $2,000 goes to that. This year we had 500 from Tom, a donation, and then $450 donation from the Elks Club. And they sent all the kids to,
We went to water safari, South Mountain, where they went to Blank and that kind of, we got 2 trips left and only $400 left, so we went directly to the public. We're offering these, trips at a pretty low price, or for, so these can be, so that's what.
otherwise they wouldn't be able to do this. We want them to have enjoyers. So instead of having that separate, we just combined that with our 7550 line celebrations, and it's a 40502 on now. And that $2,000 is there. Our celebration line is what we use for anything that's not an athletic that you have to register for. So Easter egg hunt, fire camp, summer concert series, movie under the stars, Art Parks and Looks, Touch a Truck, Trunk or Treat, Visions of Christmas, any special event that we have that's free and open to the public comes out of the celebrations. So the last page you'll see. 2022, there's 1,003,751, we're requesting 1,101,304. The biggest difference, the lifeguard salary increases, well, their rates 42,550. Is the majority of that, 20,000 for park improvements. The rest of it. Miscellaneous, salaries increase.
So there's a cut of 354, 454,000.
So it won't be that much based on encumbrances. But I just don't know what we're gonna have left with it because it's only the one. We still have some bills out there that are paid. We cut the tree down at the Rotary shelter because it was struck by lightning. We still haven't been reimbursed from the insurance company for that. So when that comes in, we've got to buy the padding frame and the turf to that money. So there's still some expenses that we have, and that's about $5,000 for that. So whatever we have left, we will encumber the next year. We just don't know exactly what that. percentage will be. Any other questions? The grant awarded in December. So we're still got our fingers crossed, yes. It's looking good though, from what I've heard. Sorry. I just realized there's a.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thanks, like, grant.
Yes. Andrea and Heather, thank you very much. Have a good trip. Andrea.
We leave on vacation for tomorrow, so
Where you going?
we're going to Mexico.
Don't let him dance on the table.
I'm sure he will be dancing on the tables there. It's okay.
Either one of them.
Right.
Either one
Both
of
of them,
them.
yeah.
Whatever happens there stays there.
Go strike that, please.
That's right, yeah. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you please come back up? Sorry.
Scott, do you want to motion now?
Yeah, I think which is good. I mean, if there's any changes anybody wants to make, I guess that's just the format we'll do. If anybody wants to talk about anything more or do any changes. I have my voice. It's great.
Oh, real quick, the biggest thing, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah, say no. I mean, the other thing is, well, that position was attrition too, so that, idea, probably somebody's gonna retire soon, so that's the idea is to get them entrenched and understand that long-term, it will be feedback. So that would be the goal, but hopefully to get things caught up, get things turned around the other way, and then using that extra staff to help that, and eventually that line would drop. That would be, that's the plan, but we can talk about that next year. Just keep that in take that on your notes or your paper that you have. Maybe I'll keep one of these presentations that we have. If you have an extra one, I'll take it, because I wrote on the one you gave me yesterday.
Gave the extra one to.
Right, just as long as you keep one of them as a public document, because these are all, because they're not accessible by anybody online. You just write public version and the date on one of those copies you have, that's for the material. And that way, if that's available, if anybody wants to.
But in terms of process, that if we're going to make amendments, if the council wants to make amendments towards your proposed budget, let's do so by motion.
And the session, you don't wait till.
I think we should do these sessions. So we can
That
track
kind of
it.
meeting.
That's right.
We gotta go more.
Yeah.
Meeting.
Yeah, if anybody wants to have any, I think that'd be the best one. Well, is there any changes? I don't think there's any changes.
I don't have that at all.
So unless it's changed on my proposed budget, then.
Maybe does the council want to make a motion to carry forward the mayor's tentative budget to the council's proposed budget?
Okay, I guess. Fine.
I'll second it.
So, Fred made the motion. Mary Claire second. All those in favor for using the youth bureau form?
Aye.
Trying to find you, you know, the number off my head.
Page number.
Crazy. You have a copy of this. Just right on that, please. if you do.
Maybe you could send me an electronic version.
Well, good evening.
was a fairly impressive presentation by Andrea. Note to self, make sure I'm first on the docket in the future.
Oh, you're number two. Remember that joke? You gotta keep saying that.
Okay, well, I prepared a couple of charts. Everybody knows I love the charts. So I've got one for revenue and one for expenditures, and they're color coded to the table here. And I chose the sunburst chart because it really lets you visually assess where the revenue is coming from and where the expenditures are going. Now, I will start out by advising you that the 2023 budget has a nearly $620,000 hole. That is tentatively put in at the bottom here of revenue in green, labeled as interfund, and that anticipates potentially having to pull it from reserve. We may be getting a disbursement in NYSERDA. My understanding is, and when that comes through, it should be in the neighborhood of 350, 500,000 K. NYSERDA is notoriously opaque and slow to deal with.
How much again, Bruce?
Between 350 and 500 K. And we could use that to offset that. And I will say that, you know, that's not a long-term plan, nor is rating reserve. At some point, if these costs can't be contained, there will be painful rate increases. This has been a terrible year. My chemical costs have gone up precipitously. And, so, thank you. So our chemical costs have gone up precipitously. The chemical that we spend the most on, polyaluminum chloride, which is used to precipitate phosphorus out of the wastewater, has gone up more than 100% here. Other chemicals such as polymer used to dewater solids for disposal, those have gone up sharply as well.
Maybe now is a good time to talk about proactive plan to try to work.
So, polyaluminum chloride, yes, it precipitates phosphorus. We have a phosphorus removal requirement, or I should say a maximum discharge allowance in our permit. But there's also something that allows us to remove extra phosphorus in order to buy forgiveness if we don't remove enough nitrogen. We also have a total nitrogen. Both phosphorus and nitrogen are connected with Chesapeake Bay requirements. We're our northern reaches, the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So DEC is leaning on us to do what my estimation is a fair share of the New York watershed portion of the removal, but here we are. So we have we installed a process for biological nitrogen removal called sequencing batch reactor. We have not been able to make that work. Primarily that is because of inadequacies in our aeration system. Sequencing batch reactor is a rigorous cycle of air on, air off, air on, air off, settle, decay. And our air system is just not up to this. Earlier this year, at Pool and I attended a series of webinars put by EPA with a gentleman named Brad Weaver, who has been working with plants to achieve nutrient reduction, even if the plant was not designed for it. Following his prescriptions, and we called the gentleman up, very nice man. I like the conversation with him. We assembled a proposal for a cycle air pilot which we presented to TEC. One of the things that came out in these webinars was the need for a proper carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus nutrient mix in the biological process. And because we have effective primary clarification, we were removing a significant portion of that carbon. And so what was going into this denitrification biological process was very carbon restricted. And so in addition to not using the decanters, not following the specific cycles of the package SPR process, we also bypassed our primaries in order, partially bypassed in order to feed more carbon into this mix. And that was kind of an interesting thing, because when we first proposed this to DEC, they kind of freaked out. They really, really don't like the bypass word, even though it was just an internal plant bypass. So we renamed it the carbon feed valve. And got them to buy into it. And
Nobody repeats that.
I also put together a little visual aid to show that we're only going from point A to point C, not from A to C. You know, we're not putting any of this out in the river. So, so we started that in September, and we are starting to see some very, very encouraging results of that. We just got back results from our contract lab for October 18, which showed us as having discharged only 183 pounds of nitrogen that day. And that's versus normally, 700, 1,000, 1,200. So if this pans out, and I'm really expecting it will, this is a phenomenal thing that will not only allow us to scale way back on the pack feed, but will also greatly reduce the amount of capital expenditures we'll have to do in order to make our plant be able to do this biological nitrogen removal long term. We've had, at the worst, been planning on a fourth aeration blower, completely reworking all the distribution piping, replacing the aeration grids, and replacing these poorly considered fabric selector walls with rubber concrete walls. If this works out, we pretty much only need to replace the aeration grids because they're ancient. They're circa 1994. They are very brittle. So this has just been terribly encouraging for us, and we're working with a gentleman with your rural water. Rural water is on a contract with DEC to assist plants in meeting these nutrient removal guidelines. And these definitely excited about this, and shared with me earlier this week. I mentioned about possibly reworking how we're doing this carbon feed thing. He said, DEC is not as concerned about process modifications. They just want to see removal. Wow. They got religion. A little pragmatism. That's different. That's refreshing. So anyway, yes, very stoked about the possibilities that we're going to be able to meet our Chesapeake Bay requirements without an additional very expensive upgrade. And this was, developed in house.
So Bruce, looking at that.
Yes.
sheet, at the top part, the reserve is $618,966, right?
Right.
Okay. And then down below, the expenditures. So I'm just trying to understand. What's the total revenue? And what's the total expenditure?
Those match, and let's find it, total revenue, $4,488,634. And revenue, or I'm sorry, expenditures would come to the same.
Yeah, so 14,000.
That's not.
Well, right now, what you're saying, the 350 to 500 is calculation.
I'm sorry, where are you?
The grant stuff we were talking about, we might get,
We'll get them. I just don't know what the timetable is.
but it's all speculation how much.
Yes,
And when, and that's not. So without that, it's hard to. balance.
Just a little clarification, because I feel a lot of water and water. I just haven't get this. We might have to. Everything we do in Portland, New York is basically because of the Chesapeake water, thing, right? The water, majority.
no, only the biological nutrient removal requirements.
So it's
Primarily,
required.
it's just,
They haven't proved really what comes from Portland and makes it all the way down there. I have
they have models and those are, yeah. Those are described in the watershed implementation plan. In fact, they had to redo the model because initially their sample point was a little ways into Pennsylvania. And New York said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And that moved the numbers a little bit, but yes, it's primarily model based in terms of what is discharged here, whether it eventually makes it to the bay.
But yes, you're right. So species permit, all species permit, stormwater management permit, we have to regulate to all of that. So this discharge has all regulated through that authority. To do that, so yeah.
I'm just
Yes.
getting off subject here.
It is.
Talk about it all night long.
Big
but
stretch.
maybe like,
Yeah. Technically, we
remember the comment I made about Pat one day about worrying about what happened to the thing? It's already gone down south. We'll leave, you know, pass it down to the next person. I was just really just asking. Clarify a question, how far did they track it? How far?
Yeah, like I said, it's primarily based on modeling. And so, yes, all of the individual plants have hard numbers. But as far as the eventual base in the river, those are based on models.
Right off track there, but it's one.
Labor costs are based on obviously contractual considerations, 2.1%.
Tomorrow was starting, you know. The budget's up. This is. Nothing against the youth bureau, I don't think it's the wrong way. It's a very important program. But this is important too. We kind of heard it up from this.
Yeah, this is projected because it was a separate fund. This is generated a separate, not through a tax. So
I really went through and sharpened my pencil this time around. Normally, and I've shared this, with those of you who've been on for a while, know I tend to try to budget conservatively, underestimate revenue, overestimate expenses. And that's why the reserve has gotten to 1.6. But this time around, I knew it was going to be difficult. I had to cut out $75,000 revenue that had been expected with Voyant. The special assessment apparently has been incorrectly calculated, $200,000 there.
yeah, so let me just touch on that real quick. So previously we determined early on in the year that the special assessment was not assessed properly. And was brought to my attention, and apparently was done the previous year too. And I continue to maintain that lateral transport at the same amount. So rather than do that, we thought it was inappropriate. The legal, we said, no, we're not going to do that. So that's part of this adjustment that we had to do this year is to try to get that. And some of the chart of accounts that Andrea was talking about, we try to move some things and organize them a little bit better. But they kept repeating themselves to hide things and maybe not show what the total costs were and try to roll into different programs. So we try to put it in so get that. I'd like to make a lot more changes, but I didn't want to make the budget too far skewed. So next year, I'd like to make one more adjustments, so we try to do that. There's already enough for everybody to accept that change. So hopefully next year it'll be even cleaner and a little bit more concise to do that. But we want to also talk about this year is the increase in the sewer rate. Because that is an effective factor that has not been discussed, needs to be understood based on what this is, because we didn't feel it was comfortable to generate that revenue in that grant without knowing what that is. We hate to pull from reserves, but I think we're above what we really need to be on those reserves. But we might be confident about that to do that. We can't afford to go in more than what we are. And then ultimately, someday, I would like to not have them transfer the funds between the sewer and offsetting the general fund budget. So that would be the ultimate goal. We do that in both water and sewer. We take some of their big chunk of their money. So it's, you know, the sewer should be running itself and the water should be running itself. And that's the way it was always designed. And that's why we have these two agencies. Over the years, we've kind of led to do that rather than getting things to where they are and have that tax rate increase. That's the way it's done. Ultimately, I want to get away from that so they can pretty much be effective to what they're actually using and what you're using it for. Then the incentive is there to be able to do that. And then we can afford to do some of these improvements. They talked about waiting for the aeration device to be brittle and falling apart, which may impact them working more efficiently, but not put us in more of a situation where we're using more chemicals to offset our nitrate output. And we can use that money to, instead of costing us money for that nitrate output and not being in violation of our permit, and more importantly, not being eco-friendly by sending those nitrates down the river to the Chesapeake, supposedly, we would be able to fix the real problems that we have in front of us, but we're not because we're doing that. So we can't fix all that at the same time, recognize that. Well, the increase to the sewer tax rate, I should have probably spelled that out more
It's
specifically.
this budget envisions a 5% sewer rate increase, which obviously is below CPI increase. And that would calculate out to for a resident who takes the minimum, which is a surprising number of residents, $1.80 a quarter or $7.20 per year. And just to expand on what Mayor Steve was saying about interfund transfer, it is a defensible concept. You know, the city does provide services that are important to the sewer department, fire protection, police protection, financial services. It's just, this is probably not a realistic number. It's a matter of getting to a realistic number, but you can't get all at once.
But Bruce, you also gotta remember that the most regulated department we have in the city, or it's, you know, state and federal and everything else, so we're kind of that.
I can't disagree. I would say that the water department, because health, you know, it's directly health related.
I'm thinking both of them.
But, you know, we're very fortunate here in Portland because we can basically stick a straw in the ground.
So you're at your wits, you're mandated what you gotta do. You gotta keep unfortunately passing around.
But we need to keep investing in, we need to invest in plans and do that. We're talking about some upgrades, we're trying to work on some different concepts and plans to do that, which we'll have to approach later. But also recognize that our debt limit, so the average debt limit is 0.8%. We're at 9% as of our current debt. So instead of 0.8, we're 9.8. So the median average is 0.8 to 9. Those are just important numbers to recognize that it is stressed, you know, and we're like, we can't keep just borrowing, it doesn't end. So I just want to make sure that we understand that impact. That's important to get to. And I have to answer the bond council tomorrow at the news interview to try to answer those questions. And I'm not quite sure. I don't want to say, how do you feel about that? I mean, certainly we're not happy about 10% numbers above the median average. Not good. And our infrastructure are not good, right? So, and again, I'm not trying to make this anything but a financial statement. By identifying all of us in this room, this is our problem. And we need to identify it. This is, you know, 7%, 5%, I'm sorry. And we talked about a 7% to try to mitigate not getting into the reserves. I feel like the reserves are where we need to be and make some improvement changes. Can't keep putting a lot of money in the savings account. We don't need to have, because we are in that rainy day, in my opinion. So rather than do that, we take a little bit from the reserves, try to be practical about it. And then we do that. 720 isn't great, crazy, you know, a $21 or $100,000 house annually is a crazy amount of increase, you know. And when we do go back to council next meeting, when we do the budget, I'm going to ask to extend the tax cap in case, because these are unaudited numbers, and in case we do have to go above that, I don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we have to do this, the consequences.
One thing I will note, if you look on the expenditures list in the gray section, 8135,40800. I don't know how it got past me, but I inexplicably did not budget anything for safety and uniforms. So I would ask if you would please move $20,000 from 54,500, which includes my chemicals. I am anticipating being able to go down on those costs and move that $20,000.
Which line was that other one? I'm sorry.
54,800 is uniform and safety.
Yeah, negative that.
So if you could move $20,000 from 54,500. Which is equivalent. Well, I find these are not terribly long names. But that's the,
Yeah, no. Well, that's what we, they still do the chart.
That's what he wants me to
Yeah.
do.
Right. But I don't see, I thought I got that on my, let me just double check.
Just real quick, sir, three municipalities that use our services.
I'm sorry.
The three municipalities that also use our services, and we increasing them by any.
They are billed by formula, and the formulas are defined in contracts. All of those contracts are technically long expired. They're still being honored. We made a start like 5 years ago to try to renegotiate them. Each of our three client communities would very much like something much simpler. They're very complex formulas being practiced, but it's just kind of petered out.
Yeah, and listen, so it sounds like we're moving forward,
But
I'm not pointing fingers here, but I mean,
right, so what I'm saying is the formulas are based on our costs calculated against their share of our total flow. And so it's not that we give them a, per unit rate, it's how much does it cost us, how much of the total amount that we treated, plus yours, here's your bill.
if you have a spreadsheet, that really realistically, we
Yeah.
show that, but are we increasing it in any of the?
Yeah,
It increases as our cost.
if you look
Kind
at,
of pointed out, that
if you look at page 14 on my budget.
Yep.
And you look at the revenues on there, you'll see it's about rough numbers, 18-20% revenue increase. If you look at revised 2022 to 2023. And, some like Paul Trinity went down because that's, again, we're trying to be realistic. And then, what was the other one? The company that's going out. Marietta, you see that went to zero. So we know that's going on. I would love to just put that in there as an offset to point the reserve, but that's not actually. So we know that's not gonna happen. So we hope it is, and somebody else, that'll be a plus the other.
And if you reference the Sunburst chart for the revenue, the blue is what our residents end up paying both in sewer use charges and in the special assessments. Orange is what we anticipate getting from our outside communities. And when you compare our population versus the population that come on McGraw and the portion of Portville that is sewer, that seems to me a fair ratio. And they're paying their fair share.
One of the things first I'd like you to touch on is the I that we were talking about with the municipalities. So what we have is a situation where these other municipalities are their waste or their intake they're bringing in, which is explain a little bit better. And we have some that are not paying attention to it, or even when they bring it up to them, not addressing it. So I'll probably come back to council at some point to say we need some demands on these people to make them address the infrastructure. Because it's talking up more, and that's what more in a chemical costs or our nitrate discharge and all the other things that are not eco-friendly. So maybe just.
Right, so here in the Northeast, everybody's collection system is old. I stands for inflow and infiltration. Inflow is improperly tied in root drains and some pumps and things of that nature. Infiltration is groundwater that find its way in the collection system through misaligned joints, root intrusions, bad balls, right, yeah, so when you look at the the I percentages, and I've gone through and tried to calculate it out as best I could. We're looking at internally within the city, what was it, like 85%? So for, for every 100 gallons that we sell to a resident, 85 more gallons of groundwater come in that we have to pump and mess with. For Homer, I think it was right around 110%. McGraw was what, 120? Portlandville, I'm having trouble calculating properly, and I haven't figured that out yet. But Portlandville has put a considerable amount of the effort into addressing their I. Portland, the city, last addressed its I in 2008, 2009 timeframe. And that was under consent order. That was quite successful. There was a lot of low hanging fruit to get, so that was successful. Homer is at the front end of a serious effort to address their McGraw is not really looked at it yet, and recall that McGraw is on the other end of a very long carrier pipe that goes through Portlandville, and that pipe serves a number of Portlandville. Right? Yes, exactly.
One of these.
Yeah.
And what we try to do with McGraw is try to run the leachate line down to the McGraw and we improve their infrastructure. Basically said they don't want that to happen, so now they want around that, spending the same amount of money to go around McGraw that they could improve their infrastructure with a help. Our problem, us here, so it's kind of consulting. So we'll just give you some numbers. These numbers are pretty accurate. McGraw sells about 3 million gallons of water to the residents per quarter, and they're sending us about 10 million gallons. So that's pretty significant, and we're addressing it. You can speed factor in there from other residents coming in from Portland going away, but it's 3 times more, given the benefit of the doubt. We need to address it. We need to keep addressing it as well. We got water leaks. So when I came in the office, our pumps didn't shut off. And water problem. So we've got them now. We got to shut them down at least for nighttime. But we need to do it.
Just one quick question, real quick. Do you do anything with any of the grease? I know it's
You're talking about
big thing.
food service establishment grease? No, we did for a little while.
Very costly to treat, right?
In 2012, we were approached by the health department, where most of the grease had been going, suddenly stopped taking it, and so the health department said, you guys need to take it.
No, I'm talking about what goes down the drains.
Oh,
That's the system that we've been working on.
right, yeah.
Injections.
Some municipalities that have been dealing with it, they test it, and they come right to your door.
Yeah,
And that's an initiative we started working on with the environmental.
for residents, that's an education.
No, no,
thing.
that's president.
For food service establishments, yeah,
We have a lot of-
and we're working on that in the environmental advisory committee. We're trying to come up with a program of both, education to the FSC management, as well as a plan for code enforcement. Right now, the code enforcement is primarily an annual inspection of records and a physical inspection only upon installation. So if we can get that somewhere a little more effective, that would help, because you may have had a conversation with Nick, but like the pump station that's in the mobile station parking lot next to across the river street, that was horrible.
I'm just pointing all this out, that people get the whole real picture, really what's going on.
Yeah.
Most people are not aware,
Right.
aware of all this.
Yeah, the grease we've addressed in a couple of ways. Number one is more heavily inspected with grease traps. Number two is the chemical injections that we can do to break down the grease and start that out, which gives us a head start coming to the plan. So we're working with an agency now with environmental impact to try to look at what we can do to do that. And they've actually started is sent some letters out saying the city is proposing to do that. We started Riverside Plaza to get the owners of Riverside Plaza, which is Arby's, McDonald's, and others that are in there that help. That's a start. But definitely, because it costs us more money and that pumps and everything.
I see a van jack, they pull the thing out, the sewer backs up the whole Well, Mel, just, when you pull out, it looks like a big old spaghetti wall. That's all coming from one.
We're
pole.
having that trouble from.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're bringing it all up.
There's a fair grease issue at the Rickard Street one, and that is almost certainly the Portland Park Apartments, because those are residents, it's more a, a public education outreach.
And we can
Right,
interject.
that people understand, you can't put grease down your drain.
Don't be learning this, more of an educational, I don't know.
Yeah, like
about track, but it's
Northern
one more
Church
thing,
is
of raising this up.
Northern Church, we have a lot of backups too.
But you're right, though, because if people think that they will have to pay for some of that inundation, they don't even quickly. I've seen some of those, we call them grease lines in California.
So we got the environmental committee back on board, and then we're trying to trying to work on a plan to educate that, to work on that, and a couple other projects, which are, one we're gonna come to, is in Scott, like, I'm gonna say no shade, no temper, but no May,
No mow, May,
no May, no May.
no mow, May.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
the
they're
idea is
they're
they're
gonna,
gonna
they're
help
gonna,
pollinators, which will be bringing.
If our sewers don't work and they back up, we won't have to mow, because it's flooded. It'll be a normal May.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right, so, does anybody have any questions for Bruce? As far as manpower, Bruce, he's gone through the same changes. I think we just had another one go out, and then somebody came in and said, the 90-day employee's gone out, I just somebody else. found it.
No.
So it's not- So that's where you got on this personnel.
Bruce, I would like to thank you for the reports. that you sent us every month.
we're such an invisible, department, and you guys have the responsibility of oversight, so it's my duty to keep you informed about what's going on.
Well, I
And we
appreciate
have, we have good stories to tell.
you do.
I appreciate you being in touch with them. It means a lot to the departments to have. For releasing communication versus like that. With this success. So I appreciate that, but it's great to know that somebody else is understanding the same things I'm understanding.
Oh, I don't understand half of what I'm doing.
Right, I better maybe rephrase that, better than we all understand it together.
I'm not a lot
Right.
when Bruce and I.
But we're
talk.
cool on cats, right?
We are, yeah. I can't say we're good with.
All right, so with that, if I can accept, somebody can make a motion to move 20,000 from 540, 500 to 540, 800, 20,000 even swap.
Also,
I'll second.
Scott, Stillman, anybody else, any other questions? All in favor for approval by those amendments?
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll make that change, Bruce, and.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers. Okay, everybody got that same? Okay. And next, we have. I think we're fine, right? You got fire development?
Aye.
Fine, one, two. You got those changes, and
Yes.
thanks. There's something really. When it gets to warm day out, it's something out, the solar being in the building, and it can't just, can't get it figured out. So, and it's like, I got, like, Tuesday, they were free, so, but anyway. Where have we been? See, we didn't get that, Evergrande. Please stand. Sixty-seven after, going forward, seven. They did identify, it's in your email, they did identify our weakness, but they didn't identify. So just update, this one we get the police, but we did not get the camera grant. So I might wanna consider looking back at council to use that ARPA money to fund this, but I think it's a great accountability piece for our police officers and for them and for us, or for anyone. And, I mean, that is very difficult. But I think it's a great accountability piece to have and put in through our ARPA to get it and then put it into the grant next year to get it funded. They told us our weaknesses in our grant application. Remind me, I guess, if you can remind me, get the police, we can reapply. We can reapply, but to bring that up, that may be a good suggestion. No, there's test ones going in before Portico by your house, by the way, so just for the record, but that's not that. These are the ones that you see they put on the best body cams, so they have that. And I wanted to get a couple extra for code enforcement, because a lot of times they go for address people. Right there in chief, and some people said they can identify and report back. One with sound. Great. So sound clips. I do not know that. I think there's a requirement.
There's a storage. We have storage.
Yeah, but this, like the storage was going to, it's the same ones that the county uses, so we're doing a mutual thing with the county to get it. We'll talk about that, please. God forbid we take up some of the fire chief's time to talk about food stuff. That is cheap. We're on page 4, right? 5. Sorry. 5. Starts on 509 and chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. First off, I sent, collaborated a packet for you folks. I know you have budgets from Mr. Jewett that was sent out that are probably is current. I've done some other stuff in that packet for your information. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But most importantly, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak on the budget and especially the fire department code budget. But I don't speak alone, and you probably see the contingent that's here, and I have to make a point to acknowledge the folks here. Deputy Chief Tenkate's here, also your Zoom man. I've got Lieutenant Chief Reynolds, Giovanni Lisi works in the code office, Nicole Bennett works in the fire department. I've got Vice Chair of the Fire Commission, Paul Quinlan, Fire Commissioner Dale Saddlemeyer, and Captain Everett from the code office. It's pretty simple. The folks here are what make this all work, and I can't do it without. So it's important they're here because it's going to be Seth Henry is here. Seth's here. He's on duty right now. He wanted to come see Miss Lane. That's all I need. So these folks have done a lot in preparing this. They know information that I don't, and I'm not gonna beat around it. There'll be questions you'll ask, and I will look back here to get the answers. But we will figure the answers out if I don't have them all. But they are a key component of the overall operation. So I had to take the time to do it. So, and it's important that they're here. So, as we look at the budget, as presented, in my executive summary I sent to you, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's some highlights from both the fire department and code office that have happened this year. And I want to start right out with a couple things to kind of set the tone of where I'm at as the department head and the fire department's budget. In the first paragraph, and I'm not going to read all of this, but simply saying that, obviously I presented the budget, the mayor and I discussed my budget. I'll call it mine, it's ours, it's all of ours. We discussed the budget and there's modifications. So I want to kind of go to the third sentence and say, significant discussion and concessions have been identified that although may appear detrimental to the budget, will provide for the success of the greater city budget. The extraordinary work by the mayor to provide a balanced budget does not go unnoticed, nor the potential need for modification in the fire department and code budgets in the future. So what I'm setting the tone with is I presented a budget. I talked to the mayor. There are some modifications that we've come to
conclusion on. I'm quite honestly okay with most of it. And I know it's for the betterment of the whole operation. And I think as the fire department, everybody sitting here, we are team players and we'll do whatever we can do. And we will do the best we can do with what we're given. And I commend the group, this council, this mayor, for this year. Anytime I've had to stand at the podium and ask for something, you've taken care of us. I recognize that. And moving forward, I'll probably have to do it again, but I think that'll play a part in this budget. So I just wanted to throw that out to start the ball rolling. Okay? All right, so there's a number of things in there. And you can read these at your leisure. I'm going to touch on a couple of highlights that are in the packet, getting to the graphs that folks have written up and done for me, because I'm not throwing at it, but I have an idea. The first section we have here, we talk about, and this works toward the budget. So it's information I think the council needs to hear so that you know exactly what your fire department and code office is doing. So you can see the first page talks about the total call volume from the year 2017 to 2022. If you look at the green lines, that's grand total where we're at. Last year in 2021, we went to 3,200 calls. Okay, and as you look at this year, we're on track. We will get there. There's no doubt. People often tell me, oh, we want a lot of EMS calls. Yep, sure do. Ironically, this year, surprisingly, our fire calls / other calls are a little bit more than our EMS calls. Don't have a reason, it's out of the norm, but it's there. So it spells out kind of what we do. And yes, the trend is more EMS than fire or other, but it's what it is. So this year's a little different, but it shows how they broke down. So there you have it in beautiful color. So but it talks about our call volumes and how they've gone up and down. And again, a couple of years of COVID skewing it all. So we just have to kind of keep that in mind. So that was important for me to make sure you guys knew exactly where we're at. Go to the next one. We thought it'd be appropriate. Derek pushed this one through. You'll look at the number of calls again from 17 to 22. Let's talk about the wards. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor. You are the winner. 3,800 calls in your ward over a 5-year period.
Go again.
Coffee pot.
No, wait, this isn't a good award.
Oh, sorry. So this is types of information that as we look at our record management systems and information we need to have, you know, when we start documenting and looking at strategic planning, facilities, response times, these play a part. Everybody has their ward that they're concerned about, and I respect that. But as we look globally, what do we need to do for the future? So this was a great idea by Derek to kind of look at it. And Ms. Lane, Seth will talk to you about your call volume. I'm not sure. I know the police chief sets his little remote buggy up out in front of your house. Maybe it's more police stuff, but anyway, so unfortunately, that's where that's at. But again, more information. So.
But there's a lot that goes into this too.
Oh,
All the businesses versus no business.
well, that's it. There's a lot.
No, I'm just saying.
No, and there's a lot. There's a lot to it. The occupancies, all right, different aspects, you know, of housing and other.
5 Weber Trailer Park, 365 calls in 1 year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I remember.
Yeah.
So,
I've got 7 dorms at a college. Come on.
well,
They were in popcorn.
Thank you, we'll get started.
look what I do now. So.
No, I'm just making it fair.
No,
for
And,
everybody.
and that's it. There's a lot of things that go into it. So it's very interesting, but just for your knowledge, the next page talks about that in a percentage and it just splits it up that just shy of 24% of them are in the 8th ward. And you can see what it is. So it's just information that I thought you folks needed.
How many go through the senior building?
Senior buildings, as in 42 Church and 51 Port Watson. I don't have that information, Deputy Mayor, but I
bet you it's about.
gain it. It probably plays a part, yes. So I can
He's
find
trying to
that.
make 7 go to the top. I can see that already.
No, that's total. That's total calls all the way. This is modeled blue in here. The second page is just all calls. That's all calls. So, yeah, and that's what you just.
Derek, this is interesting. It'd be nice to have this little mini challenge for these awards. All of them do a better, more efficient job at educating and fire. And we could probably.
So,
You need me to go to your board meeting?
so your next page, we talked about simultaneous calls for a 5-year period. we're looking at, and specifically in 5 years, we've really seen an uptick. It used to be a single call, you had handled it, you may have got a general, we call it general alarm and an EMS call, you may have had a couple. I text the mayor frequently and I say we're 4 deep. That means we got 4 calls going on at the same time. We're shuffling to make it all work with the staff we have. And so during the day when we do that, obviously the code folks are helping us, so they'll jump on an EMS call, but you're starting to see this and the trend is up. It's upticking 914 for last year, and I suspect we'll get to 900 this year. Simultaneous calls, and they play a big part, especially when we're committed to the EMS side of it. 2 guys on one call, folks on one call, 2 folks on another call, 2 folks on another, and then the staff is at 6, you can see where I'm in. That's when I start to worry about other aspects of what we provide for fire service. So,
And
go ahead.
this, sorry, this hand grenade probably not appropriate, but sometimes we have situations where we are the only EMS response.
Or there's a delayed response by the ambulance, because the system is its system's having issues right now entirely, the EMS system, and it's not just the ambulance, it's the hospitals, it's the Syracuse hospitals, it all trickles down, so there's delays, and the system's got a lot, there's no one part of it that's bad, it's the system, the whole system problem.
Everybody should identify that that's.
Yeah, so that may be why. Yeah, so we're stepping up and still doing what we need to, but where we might have been able to go in, treat a patient, they go on the ambulance for 20 minutes, we're done. We may be there for 45 minutes, so it's definitely something we're gonna have to look at for the future.
It's invaluable to have everybody trained.
So, yes. Oh, go ahead,
Just so
Derek.
the council's aware, we had a fire yesterday in Glen, and we heard about, that was our 3rd call at the same time. We were on 2 EMS alarms prior to that. Thankfully, we had the full shift yesterday, no one took the day off. So we were able to handle, the medical calls with 2 fly trucks. And left all the engines in place. They've been a normal day where guys go off, 1 engine would them up on Homer Ave and far side of the city. So you only had 1 engine in the ladder truck over. Active fire. Yes, it's fire control and fairly line of condition.
It was great to have Cortland come in and help on that situation.
I believe Virgil ran the city call.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
I didn't know.
I think you had more than 3.
I was excited, a little excited.
Oh, rules here. And that's it, and our mutual aid neighbors, I can't say enough to, I upgraded that very quickly due to the nature of the occupancy of the building and what I saw. And that brought in the backfill for our station, so we were never unprotected in any way, we never are, but the neighbors are always there to help us and we make it work with them, so we're very appreciative of that too.
Yeah, I just want to take a minute because it was super impressive how well they handled it. And, the business owner was ready to start, but I was left there at 10 o'clock last night, she was ready to start without losing business, and it's one of our biggest employers by 5 o'clock this morning because of their consideration for her existing equipment, consideration for everything that's there and keeping everybody's personal safety. You can't check, and I think, I think you can't, until you experience something like that, you see it, over Michael was there. And Cortland coming in and willingness to just jump in and want help. And vice versa, back now at Super Bowl, when we had that situation. You think about all the things we had this year, the truck off the bridge, the Super Bowl, my hands on it, Mike, we can't, many times, we're on top of each other. Big ones.
And a lot of unusual stuff this year. This year's not normal. It's just been a lot of different things. So the next page talks about our actual, we would call our actual structure fires that we go to. We go to a lot of structure fires in the year. They're coded as structure fires. We get there and it's a pot on the stove that just got hot. And so it's not a structure fire anymore. But these are actual fires in residences or buildings. And it talks about what they are and classified them as a structure fire. So this gives you a little example of some of the values and the losses that we try our best to manage. This is something that Chief Glover actually started years ago talking about. You know, we always say, oh, we lost the home, it was an $80,000 home, we lost $80,000. He wanted to, and it's definitely the norm now to look at, okay, the example yesterday is prime. we're estimating less than $50,000 loss to this building and a facility that is probably $10 to $15 million of asset. So when you look at that, you know, as we look at stuff up to today, the numbers that I'm showing are $300,000 for $373,000 in loss this year in total, okay? But if you look at it from the other side of it, there's $17 million in savings that we've saved. And that's kind of the way Chuck always talked about, you know, what did you save? We done, we lost stuff, but what did you save? And that's the way we're looking at it. So I think that puts it in a different perspective. So, you know, so, you know, what's the value? Well, here's an example of the value. So just, so that's that, and that's what that spreadsheet's for. And that's primarily all the stuff that we had to the fire department. In the narrative, it talks about response times, standards we like to meet. We like to be out the door in a minute and on the scene anywhere in the city within 4. That's a goal we have, and we're meeting 83% of the time. So, again, it falls into stations and second calls and all that, but it's okay. So that's why your department is scattered the way it is and what we do. So that's the fire department aspect of it. The code office also will put in some different information that we thought would be of importance to you. You look at inspections. Obviously, the council, the mayor took a leap here in March and said, let's try this and we get codes going where we need to. You took a leap and we move forward. Deputy chief or captain can talk more specifically, but I am under the impression, here's a list of the inspections that we do, different types of inspections and what we do. And I'm told that we are back on track to the right numbers that we're supposed to be on the regular schedule we're supposed to be. So we're following up, we're getting ahead of things like we should in the code office. As far as our inspections, we did fall behind on 2 things, some COVID stuff we didn't do inspections with, but also the staffing. Most recently, deputy chief and captain talked about staffing and having people to do the job. You folks gave us that support, and we're starting to see the fruition. And I think a year from now, we're gonna be able to give you more information on just what's going on. So this kind of spells it out with our yearly inspections and what's going on today. So.
Wait, one quick question. I'm
Yep.
not sure if you could answer. Just for my personal. Most of people know, I just want to clarify the electrical third party and electric. What would that be? Because normally you don't do electrical. That's one reason I'm asking, because I know.
You know, but that's a plan again with, but we do.
Still goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can't say that I can, whatever.
Whatever this or whatever inspector they use, okay. But you're still recognizing it, okay.
Yes.
Because they're monitoring it. They have to monitor it. So there's some information. I don't want to dwell on a lot of this. I just thought you could take it home and read it and ask questions later if need be. Complaints, all right, in my mind, and again, I'll say I'm new to the code office, but okay. Complaints, there's 2 complaints that I understand that are happening. One is complaint from the constituent to you. Right, and probably everybody here has probably called me or Roy at one point or another saying somebody's called about X. That's one type of complaint. All right, there's also the complaint where Roy's staff that we have in the code office is out and seeing stuff before they call you. All right, so there's 2 types of complaints. Again, we are still getting all that information and data collected to see how it works and the differences. We're working on that with our new program, Municity. We're hoping to be able to look at that. But from an outside view, I'm told that we are doing a lot more of the proactive complaints versus them calling you or calling the board, which I think is ultimately the goal.
Yeah.
All right, if they're not calling you or the mayor or the office, we're doing okay. And I know there's been a lot more. We've got the 2 firefighter Medler and Phil Hulick are there now, and their clipboards, they're out on patrol doing stuff. So it's happening. So I think that leap you took in March is starting to come to fruition, and hopefully your phones will ring less. They'll still ring, but that's the goal, is those types of complaints. So I'm told that's some of that, and it's listed here. So obviously there'll still be the complaints, there'll still be the issues. Here comes snow, grass, whatever.
Does that new software allow us to have ability to track that at all? Or-
Yeah.
It does. So we can Because you're writing in anything, you're documenting in anything. Right? And this document came from this document we're looking at here, this came from the incident, so we don't have previous years.
Right, but we have some other information,
Our old program.
old program tracks too. There's a transition, they still have municipal, was it IPS, the old one?
I guess.
It's still there until we get some other legacy data moved and working. Well, the municipality is the new program that Chief Tenkate brought in when he was in the court office. And there has been issues just like any program. But Roy and has been diligent, along with Gene to figure out what it is, and we've been holding them to the fire. Holding them to the fire, to get things right, because we know how important data is.
Ultimately, is the other system was maybe more advanced, but it's more costly to keep. And the long term, it's not going to give us the same information that we need to have, be able to tie into our news program. G has put together some other independent stuff, so we can get that figured out.
I think there's one more page about permits. Yeah, so, again, this is information regarding the permitting process. Obviously, the permitting process, starts the whole, in my mind, it starts the whole folder, if you will, of documentation for any parcel. And if things are gonna happen, the permits are there. The municipal is letting us do certain things, we have to track it better. G has set up different systems internally within our organization, within the office, to make sure there's a tracking mechanism, make sure things are followed through on, and that deals right with getting approvals of different boards. Also working toward collection of invoicing. Things are getting tightened up significantly. We're actually following up and sending out second or third, which has happened, but not regularly. Second and third invoices, and then it gets to a point where it goes on their taxes. We're working through that. We're getting better tracking systems. It's all about systems, I tell them, and they're doing well. So we're seeing that, which is not the goal to have revenue, but revenue is important. The goal is compliance and doing the right thing. Again, there's a lot of stuff there. So again, this is a snapshot in time of some of the things that we do, and I thought it would be important to have that for you. And if you look at that and have questions, that's fine. So we can talk about that. So the next part, which is all folded up, and is 5 pages of information. First page is a summary between the fire department and codes. All right, these are budget proposals. And again, this has been modified since I met with the mayor and talked about the budget stuff that he wanted and what we're doing. So I just wanted to put it all there on the table, if you will, to see where we're at and what we've got going on. So this is a snapshot of the more in-depth ones that you have farther on. These should match pretty close to what the mayor's budget sheets that you have. If they're off by a bit, there may be a number that got added somewhere else and we worked through it. They're not off by much. So you can see we budgeted in 2022 for the fire department, $3,426,000. In the proposal that I put forth as the department head to the mayor, $3,482,000, which showed a $56,000 increase. So operationally, $56,000 increase from last year to this year. In a $3 million budget, which is the second largest budget collectively in the city, next to the police, 1.6%, there it is. So that's what I put forth, and we can talk more about that if we need to. Not going to dwell on it, but it's there. The revenue side of things, I wanted to spell that out because I think in the past we've misappropriated our revenues. And this is back to Chief Glover, talked about revenues and having accurate revenues. So you can see in 2022, we had $53,000 recognized as revenue the fire department would receive in some way. I proposed $6,000. And that's because I believe some of the other revenues that were budgeted for us for a number of years were false. They were not accurate, they were not true, and I didn't feel comfortable with putting them back in that way. Obviously, it affects the budget because it's $50,000 that we're not anticipating. I don't think we ever did. So I'm not saying much more to that. The $6,000 was something that we did, and that will fall back as we look into our revenue for the fire department. Motor vehicle accident recovery has Those are two items. It's $6,000, I'm very conservative because it's all new to us. I don't feel comfortable putting big numbers there. So you can see that decrease. All right. In red, obviously, if you go down to the next line for the fire department, you can see the same number for 2022. And then the difference for the mayor's budget is proposed, and you can see it actually is a decrease of 2%. And the revenue stays the same. So this is a snapshot. So the two budgets, and the mayor's budget is here, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, and go through the budget lines to talk about specifically, compare, contrast, and tell you what I think. So, if you look on the other side, the right side of the paper, code department, okay, again, a lot of numbers here because we had a lot of transition from 2021 to 2022. A year ago this time, the code office was looking totally different. And the budget was totally different. Chief Tenkate was in the office at that point, worked with finance office to do the best they could with the civilian building department they were going to form. So there's a lot of unknowns. He put some numbers together, and those numbers are what you'll see there. So you can see from 2022 to 2023, I put in, we put in an increase of $166,000, which incorporated a couple more salaries and some other stuff that the code office felt it needed to work, because it was much lower in 2022 because of the transition we thought we were going to use. Revenue lines, obviously the code has a lot of revenue. And I say a lot, there's a lot of lines, if you will, that talk about that. So in 2022, it was budgeted 170,000. We forecasted 184,000 with an increase of 14,000. Again, very conservative. You look back at trends, talking with Roy a little bit now, we will clear the $200,000 line this year. So we're already ahead of what was estimated. That's what it should be, right? And we also have some other budgeted years. I just wanted there for information. In the mayor's proposed budget, as he did it, he changed a few things and looked at, again, some things he wanted to modify within the operations budget, which changed our total increase. It dropped it by about 37,000. So that's a $30,000. We'll talk a little bit about that. And also some revenue lines that he increased with. Still conservative. I think we're still going to be fine. We can talk more about that. So this is a snapshot of both departments, where they're at, and I can easily go through each line for both, and we can talk about them specifically. And we can get a little more in depth if you want, which probably we should. So if you go to the second page, what I have here, we have this is our revenue for the fire department. Okay, you can see what we budgeted in 2022. And it's going to mirror the numbers that are on the front page. I budgeted 6,000, and the mayor also kept that there. So that's $6,000 in revenue. All right. In my notes and in the executive summary you got, we talked about the different revenues. We've billed $12,000 already for motor vehicle accident recovery since we started in probably February, which we invoiced for $12,000. We're still getting that money back. So conservatively, I put $1,000 in because I don't know. We're at 3,000, I think now. I think we're going to get a lot more. But I'm very conservative. So I think that's going to change. Hazmat recoveries, an abnormal year due to Chief Tenkate's diligence, significant reimbursements for hazmat calls and other unique things. But we've had some very unique things and money's come through. So I don't know where to go. I put $6,000 down. It's going to be more than that. And I think by the end of the year, you'll see a lot more and we'll go from there. But it's all new to us right now to a point, and I didn't want to overextend it. And the mayor left that, so I'm comfortable with that aspect of it. And again, that's the fire department revenue line, which is, I think, more factual. We'll see what happens. So if you look at the next line, this is the fire department expense budget. Okay, this is what we make the whole thing work with. And I can't believe I forgot my ruler. Nicole, I forgot my ruler. There you go. Oh, no, this one's that fancy one, right?
Yeah, you can have magnifying if you can get my.
Oh, is that supposed to mean?
Let's try to help you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, so the budgets, and obviously you're gonna go through a lot of them tonight. You can look at some of the same numbers with the youth bureau, with the wastewater, a lot of the numbers coded are the same and they fall the same way. So I'll just be brief on some of these things that I think, we need to talk about, or at least there's changes. So not sure how to present it to you, so that it's clear, but I think on the master one that Mr. Jewett sent out, I think it does the same thing. It just might got a lot more colors in it. I gotta see. So, obviously the personal services line, the mayor's budget and mine are the same. We have figured it out. Nicole and I we did, salaries, blended salaries. We looked at people's steps. These are the salaries for all the people that are in the fire department. In a grand total. There's no surprise. It's the biggest number in the budget, but it's not a surprise. But we worked through to make sure they're all accurate, any jumps they may have, any increases, length of service, stuff like that. So that is accurate, and there's been no change from that, from the mayor's budget to mine, and we're comfortable with that. Shift manning, if you go to the 510401, all right, shift manning, so if somebody calls in sick, we have to backfill. Because we gotta have 6 people, somebody's sick, drops to 5, we bring somebody in. All right, we can look at some of that across the way. I budgeted $10,000 more because I was anticipating that we had a couple times when we were a bit close on that budget number. And I was a little worried and said, I want to make sure I'm not going to come back and say, we're short. I increased it a bit, and that's one of the places the mayor dropped back to 50. Again, it's not a known and depends on a lot. We're also on the tail end of some COVID stuff, which has affected our department. We start running 1 or 2 people through a COVID run. And backfilling and exposures, it adds up. So maybe we're at the end of that, so we don't have to worry about it. So, but that's where that's at. Emergency call in, that's the fires. If we have a fire, we have to backfill or come in for an off-duty fire. I've looked at different numbers. We've been close. We've had a good year, believe it or not. But prior years were pushing 10,000. So I increased it a bit. Thinking that we probably should start looking at some of that, and the mayor's looked at it in a different way, and it's fine. I think we'll be okay with that. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm ridiculing the mayor's budget in any way. I'm just comparing what I did to his, and I think we're going to be fine. Either way, I guess I should sum that up. We're going to be fine. Training line, again, that's when we send people out. That's to pay people to go out or pay to have them cover shifts if somebody goes on duty has to go and they have to back first. So little modification there. Retirement line has not been funded in a number of years. Chuck stopped funding it, and that was in anticipation if somebody was going to retire. We knew it, and they were going to cash in all their time. It was so difficult to manage it, even though we knew the liability was there, we couldn't do it. So it's always been a line that's never been used. Double time, okay, if the folks are working on holidays, certain holidays, contractually, we get what we call double time. So for the hours they work, they get double time. And that varies, but it's pretty consistent unless somebody's off, so we can absorb that. The DTs, these are also known as our Kelly days. Kelly time. All firefighters that work the shifts they work 110 hours above the 40-hour work week. And so contractually, in order not to pay them overtime for every hour above 40 hours, they get Kelly time, 110 hours. That 110 hours is time they can take off. Or contractually, they can sell it back. And that's what this line covers. So if they work it, they don't get paid overtime, but they can get paid straight time to sell it back if they were. Going down through holidays, unused holidays is the same thing. The EMT stipend, you'll notice, is blank with the mayor's budget and my budget. That was rolled in at the beginning of the year when we negotiated, talked about the board budget and all the stipends the firefighters get, all went in their salaries. So that's why there's nothing there. Unused vacation, same thing. Firefighters, when they get so many years, can sell back their vacations. And this has been in the contract for I don't know how many years, back to the Damiano era, when the goal was if they didn't have to take the time off and we paid them, the thought was you still have people here that were here. You were still manning the department better than if we force people to take time off. So that's that. Uniform allowance went away, hazmat stipend went away, educational benefit. There is a contractual obligation if new firefighters get 2 of 4 different certifications in their first year, they get $1,000. I again anticipate retirements next year and I put $4,000 in. Again, it's an anticipated retirement thing, can't guarantee they're gonna do it, but I budgeted for it. If they do, make it work, it's $4,000 now. Training stipend, we had certain individuals that were trained in certain specialties. And when they performed training, they got a small stipend to do that, again, rolled into their stuff then, in their regular salary. Out of title pay, 2 captains are on duty all the time, if 1 captain's off, a firefighter moves up, becomes what we call the acting captain. They get a nominal fee, nominal pay for those hours they work. Okay? Now so those are our personnel lines. Those are the lines that are either contractually, we pay people, that's taking care of the people. Okay, now as you move down into other things, our operating equipment, that is a vehicle replacement line that was made a number of years ago. We did put in for another vehicle of some sort to replace, get back into our system of replacing vehicles every year. So when we get rid of vehicles, they actually have value versus we'll put a lot of money in for. So we did budget for that and mayor carried that over. Interoperable radio system, that was 10 years ago. If members of the council were on for that, you can remember that debacle. When we went to the new radio system. So that was there, but that's been paid off. We haven't had to do that in 5 years. The next line is is a general line that was used for COVID. So any expenses that we had to have, we would take out of there, keep track of. We made it easy for, I didn't say easy, easier for Chief Tenkate when he started doing reimbursements for COVID for the entire city and all the departments. It was one line, fire department had this, DPW had this, police had that. It made it a little bit easier. But at the beginning of the year, the mayor indicated we didn't want to use that line for anything anymore, so we stopped. So that's why there's nothing there. 401 line, that's our fuel line. It puts fuel in the apparatus and it puts tires on the apparatus. Just got an estimate the other day. $725 to put a drive tire on a fire truck and $840 to put a steer tire on a fire truck. So things keep going up. So fortunately, you folks did grant us some extra money to get through the end of the year with fuel, and we're greatly appreciative of that because when we did this a year ago, I didn't anticipate having to come back to you for more fuel. But that's what that line's for. I moved it up to 32,000. We can see where that goes. Equipment repair, you'll see some numbers there. We've been at 85,000 for 2 years. That's to fix the trucks, service the trucks, do whatever we need to. You'll see that our actual is 168. You graciously gave us money to replace a motor at one of the fire engines earlier in the year. So that went in there and came out of there. So that's why that actual is a little bit higher, nowhere near what we do every year. So the 85,000, we've maintained it, and the mayor left it there because we still need to fix fire. Office supplies, that's self-explanatory. Office equipment, again, some modifications there. And then we're into the 405, and this line is everything, what I call everything else in our fire station line. This is what fixes the fire station. This is what fixes the boiler. This is what fixes the overhead doors. What else do you like? It's everything. Anything else? Roof floor. Upkeep to the station, upkeep to Station 2. We use this for a lot of the other things that are just other things, but it's all operational stuff in the department. So that's primarily that's for. Tools and equipment, self-explanatory. You'll see that there's a $25,000 difference. And if you'll recall, some folks here may recall last year, we anticipated replacing our records management system. To give you the pretty graphs that we have and the information we have, because ours is 11 years old, and anybody that understands data and understands computer systems, 11 years old is 10 and a half years old, but 10 and a half years out of date. We've been looking and trying to figure out stuff. We've got some ideas to talk to Alderman Scott for next year about how we may do this. There's just so much out there, and we weren't happy with the cost was a problem, and we weren't happy with the product. So we weren't just going to buy it and do it. So again, that has been cut back to maintain levels of before last year. I anticipate we're gonna work through this the first quarter, the first half of the year, get some ideas, and then we may come back and say, hey, if there's financing available, can we upgrade our system? So I'm perfectly fine with that. I think we can make that work. So we have a plan. Equipment repair can be anything from an axe to a piece of hose. Just fix the stuff. So some years we're really close, and some years no axes break. Uniform allowance, again, you'll see a credit from the year before. Firefighters that went into their salaries, so we no longer have to budget for it separately, it's in their salaries. I did put in $3,500, and the mayor kept it there because there are other incidental uniform stuff, items that we buy. First round is a firefighter, we buy a badge and a name tag. If we become a captain, they get the same thing. So there are certain uniform things we have to buy. And that also covers some of the other things we have to do. Utilities, we're learning more about that, but that's never been part of our budget request. That comes out of somewhere else. But we're learning more about that. Professional services, again, we are looking at a reduction of 5,000. This professional services covers a lot of different things as it would in any department. Some of our contractual things, the biggest ticket here is our annual medical clearances for all our firefighters. Okay, nearly $400 per person to get a physical. So it adds up very quickly, but everybody has to have one. And we've been very diligent about that. It's needed. It protects this council in the long run. And it also protects our people, more important. So everybody gets a physical, volunteer career, it's all the same. So that's one of the biggest items for there, but there's other professional services we may look at that come out of there as well. Travel and training, that's when I want to send somebody to the fire academy for the recruit class. I want to send Mike down for a social media class, the cost of the class or the cost of the mileage to go. That's what that's the cost of the class, not the paying to go. And so 11,000 with 2 people, we'll probably go through that with 2 recruits. It's about not quite that, but we'll be close. We'll be all right. Postage is always fun. The mayor took it out. That just answered my question, so done. Public information, I did increase this a bit and in anticipation of some of the outreach stuff that we've done this year. And I have to speak to this, and I'll speak to it now. The department as a whole, spearheaded by Chief Reynolds, has done a lot of outreach work. Doing things that are probably out of the norm, but definitely getting out and engaged. And this was a vision the mayor had when we first had some of our meetings last year, the end of last year, you know, getting out there. So it's public information. I increased it a little bit. We've absorbed other stuff to make it work. We work closely with the youth bureau, the police department to try to do all these things. So it's going to evolve. It's going to continue to grow. And I understand where we're at with this. This isn't detrimental to the end of us going out and doing stuff, but Derek can speak more to some of the stuff that we've done that is new. We've always done our Santa thing in the Christmas time. We helped light the tree, open house, firefighter for a day camp. But now Derek's got this trick or treat truck thing. Two separate things. So there's a number of different outreach programs that are starting to develop, and it's only going to grow, and we're okay. But I think the vision of the department is to get out and do more. I know the mayor's made that clear to us that he wants, so we're doing it, and we may have to look at other things that may require me to come back and say, we want to fund this to make this happen. But we've had good luck with it. Derek, you want to add anything to that? If that's your forte. Okay.
Leave it up.
So turnout gear, both career and volunteer, it's split, it's 4,000. That's minimal. We could buy one outfit for a structural firefighter. Is that $4,000? One person. Fortunately, we're able to buy a number of sets here last year or beginning of this year. through the bond stuff that we'd set up 2 years ago. So we're okay right now. This is those incidental things. In the year, we look at replacing gloves, maybe helmet shields if they, got melded in the fire or anything like that. Hoods, different smaller items, hats, and stuff like that. So that's what that's there for. So we absorbed that and we do that. So 4,000 is there. But when we have to really replace things and they're standard, we have to follow every 10 years, structural firefighting gear has to be replaced. So then I'll have to come back and have to talk. We're okay with that. And then the Board of Engineers, that hasn't changed in a couple of years. That's a contract cost to volunteers for them to do their services. Again, it hasn't changed in a couple of years, but that gives them finances to run their part of the organization. They buy equipment, certain types of equipment, do certain things as a group. So that's there, that's unchanged, and I'm comfortable with that. So if you look at the fire department, the snapshot says 134,000 that we're shy from what I originally proposed. Deep thought brings this down to the point that anything's possible and functional, and I concur with what the mayor's done. I've been reassured that, and I'm very comfortable with this group. What you did for me this year, as far as the fire chief coming and asking for help, it's a different environment. So, although I still think some of that I need, I understand where we are. I respect that and commend the mayor for that. If there's any questions to that, I'll field them now.
I'll make a statement real quick. So I appreciate the delicate dance around.
I do.
I really appreciate that. But I just want to recognize that, I'm sure all the department heads were not brought back in the room when after all these cuts were made. This is what enough time. So they should have been told and sent out Saturday and Monday morning. There was a lot of red-faced people, the ones that approached, but so ultimately, if I took all the budgets and put them together, from what was asked or requested, there would have been an additional $2.1 million. And remember, $1.5 million in 2021, another $1.5 to $2 million in 2022 that we mitigated a lot of it. Again, because of these buildings. Feel like a little bit of a hypocrite asking everybody to do all these extra events and then take $1,000 out of it, but recognize that, we're trying to get some other outside agencies and private people to help sponsor some of those. And, Andrea and Derek have done a great job in getting that, like the Visions of Christmas and sponsoring the whole event for the tree lighting. Just trying to get those kind of ideas promoted. So, but I want to say it on the record too, so you'll hear it from some of the other ones too, that we had to tighten up. It had to happen. It's never a pleasant thing, and we certainly probably hated for it in some aspects, and the job was like very lonely in some aspects trying to put this together. But if you do, based on, if you look at it, which is I think it's great, he has his actuals in there, and you do that comparative in there without identifying those, and then past history in the past, trying to clean up some of the other things in the past. Fortunately, the fire department runs a really good ship over there, and they really keep track of everything, do a great job. But so I just want to recognize that, at any point, all these people cutting, there's going to be some incumbents just coming in, they'll get remove those lines. So in the past, I keep telling the department heads, it's not a use it or lose it kind of situation. I don't want to create that atmosphere because that is not necessarily best for the city or for them. If they know that they have that ability, so we move that to those lines to cover what they do, then we'll come back to you guys as the finances to make sure that that happens. So we will not let you hang on, but if you go over top of that and saying that publicly, I'm going to speak for everybody nodding their head here, that we will address it appropriately and responsibly as we're trying to do the budget. That fine line, there was nothing personal for any department of that. But I appreciate your delicate answer now. He did this, but I get it. So, we're on the same team and we're trying to do the best we can. Intentionally. Prove me wrong on the
Would you like to talk about the full budget now?
Yes.
Okay. So again, This is not my forte. I'm glad Chief Tenkate's here, Chief Reynolds, and obviously Captain Everett. Here's the code, folks, okay? I took a leap in March to learn more about it, and I've learned so much, but I'm definitely not your expert. So if we look at the revenue lines, these are lines that, you can see our proposed lines. And Mike worked with Roy and G on estimating some revenues. And I'm not gonna go through every one of them. You can look back through. I thought it'd be nice to see the actual amounts that we've had in 2016 moving forward. You'll see ups and downs. It's cyclical, right? It goes up. There's something. Roy made a point to tell me that in some years we had, for example, the hospital had a big building from there. And I mean, a multi-million-dollar building, construction project. Huge building. Out of the norm. Okay, so some of these you would say, well, gosh, you're shy of. We have to take everything into consideration. So
Most years, it seems like there's one giant project that is a significant portion.
So, and so we looked at that, and when they put these numbers together, we estimated, and again, I felt estimated conservatively at 184.5. We are already surpassing that this year, and we're above. Okay, right now we're 188, so we're above what we're forecasting for next year, and we're already 18,000 above what was forecasted for 2022. Okay, so we're conservative. Again, I anticipate a couple things. I'm going to speak very candidly. With G in that office, following up on these invoices, making sure they're getting taken care of, we're going to see improvement immensely. Roy is on top of things, guiding her in some of the building permits and what needs to be built, how things laid out. Accountability is big, system is big, and they are making things happen. So I think you're going to see. I'm not going to put a number at the end, but I think you're going to see a significant increase in this next year. That's just my opinion. If I'm wrong, Roy, speak up. Okay, thank you. So simply, I had 184,000. The mayor put in 217. He's increased it by 33,000. I think that's wonderful. I think we're going to exceed that. So the mayor did a good job with this, but I think we're going to do better.
If I may, real quick, if you go back to that page, with all the inspections on it, that purple line at the bottom that we put on there, that's one of the extra revenue potentially that he's talking about. Depending on how our housing committee meetings go, that bottom line there could be X, if you multiply that by 100, that is extra revenue potentially for our office. On an annual basis.
1 and 2 family inspections, right?
And as well as, just want to make a couple of things, we had recently a vacant housing, what was that? Remember that, how much that was amount? $24,000 that. in 2016?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't remember all these numbers, but it was $24,000 in 2016 that we had to let go because we didn't follow through with that. So G has taken an initiative to keep track of everything and do what we need to do. So I look at those things alone and all the other ones that we're not following through with and doing. I think that's with the more active code enforcement, I think that'll happen.
So the 1 and 2 family dwellings, like Captain Everett talks about, obviously there's a revenue piece to that, and it's going to increase. More importantly, now I'm going back to the time of Chief Pierce, who always spoke of getting in certain buildings and inspecting them. Our 1 and 2 family dwellings where we see most of our structure fires in some aspect, and we've had more than one. I don't have that data, but Chief Pierce always said if we could get in these buildings, we would have prevented that fire. So it's a safety aspect, and that ultimately is where we're at. If we can provide a safety aspect and get in there and do that, that's our goal. All right, yeah, revenue helps offset things, but our goals have always been. So again, you can look at this. I don't want to dwell on the revenue side of it. The things are there. You know, I think we're going to exceed what the mayor's even proposed next year for the revenue. And I know the revenue helps offset the cost to operate the code office as we talk. It's a big deal. So, so there's some of the information for the revenues, and I think we're okay with that. Unless there's any other questions on that one specific. Okay, the final page, page 5 of 5, talks about the code department expenses. So this is what it is to run the department outside of the revenue lines. So As we go down through and look, again, set up much like, thank you, Nicole, much like the fire department's page, it looks the same. Talks about the proposed in yellow, what the department proposed, and what the mayor's budget is. I'm not gonna dwell on these, you'll see some things there that you go and you look at, for example, the second line, part-time personal services, $120,000. That was budgeted a year ago for the budget. The anticipation, Chief 10K said was directed, we were gonna do a lot with part-time employees. And that's where that was primarily gonna come from. So obviously we changed that and we put the cost for 336, that's the salaries for the people that are being employed. So one note is the movement of Bob Ray salary is gonna start coming out of here, so that was moved over and came out of the mayor's budget. So that's what it was before, but Roy and Captain Everett is gonna work under him as that, it's there already, it's just, we're shuffling it. So that's where that's at. So as you come down the expenses, things remain pretty much the same. Some stipends, again, they're still in there. Roy's an EMT, goes on EMS calls. He gets a stipend, but not anymore. It's in his salary. So that's why that one line's blank. All right, and you go down through, there's been some changes, but truly in the code office, they're minimal. And in talking to Captain Everett, there's nothing we can't absorb and make work or come back and visit. So the biggest item that we will see a concern with is if you look at 415 professional services. All right, there's two professional services. There's two professional services in total. The $8,000 or the $10,000 mark is the contracts they do for snow removal, grass, garbage. Okay. Little bit of a change there, but it's okay. We can look, and we're using Matt Moore. Things are getting addressed.
Recognize they're all reimbursed.
Right, and they are reimbursable. Thank you, Mayor. They are reimbursable. We just have to work at it a little bit, but most of that is reimbursable in some way. The other aspect is the one above that, 415. You'll see a $14,000 change. This did present a little bit of a concern to the staff when I talked to them. Only because that covers a lot of the, again, professional services and Chief 10K actually typed this up, talks about municity, our access to different standards and regulations, memberships, online things. You can see those numbers are all listed there. You did very well with those. Those are professional services that we have to enroll in. The biggest one's municity, which is the new program we're using. The concern is we will not be able to fund that. It may be 16,000 versus 21 because we've worked with them a little bit. We're still underfunded there. In a brief discussion about that, we don't have to pay that until a year from now, next year. We're still working through some stuff with municipality. G is sending emails and making phone calls. I just sent a letter to them. We had some concerns. We're working through it. Would probably end up happening if this stays the same, which it can, is we will probably come back and say, we need to pay a municipal bill next year at this time, and I'll come back to you and say, can you help us figure out a way to do it? And you'll have a better, I assume, from talking to the mayor, you'll have a better understanding of where your total budget's at, other costs that are gonna be there next year, your sales tax, all that stuff that we talked about. So that's the biggest concern, I think, which Royce told me about. That we're really worried about, but I don't think it's detrimental. So,
We can get rid of the top of it. Put that back up if you'd like to.
we could,
Or we can try
do
to
that.
assume that municipality is going to be outside of that. We're just a couple of times.
I'm open to, anything we can do as a team. Whatever you want,
But I hate to not get away from that part. Keep rotating.
Well,
We'll just got 30,000 to the vehicle there.
yes, and that's what,
Exactly.
and that's it, yeah.
So I'm just,
So the replacement of the vehicles obviously is key. I'll look at Alderman Silverman and the deputy mayor, been a long time doing budgets. We've always, Chuck tried to implement, it did, replacing vehicles on a regular basis, so we weren't putting money in the junk, getting rid of it for $500. So we're gonna get back.
Used to have a fund.
So, so there's a lot to that, and I don't mean to sound like we need to have vehicles, that we need shiny stuff, but we need to have it so we're taking care of things, not putting good money in the bad. That's what it's always been. So, and so that's kind of where that is. So those are, in conclusion, that's a summation of anything. Is there any questions that you may have for what's here? And again, I defer to the experts in the gallery. If there's any questions that we can answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioners, thank you for coming and supporting
I have to
the
say,
fire department and certainly the staff.
the fire commission, and I'm glad you're here, Chairman Heath, Bonnie Heath. She would be here, but she had a doctor's appointment with her husband out of state, so she couldn't make it. The vice chair and this fire commission, and I don't deal with any of the other commissions, but this fire commission is actively involved in everything the fire department does. Very supportive of us. They also call me out, which is important because I think that's what the intent is as a liaison group between this group and me. You know, they review our bills, they review everything, and they'll ask questions.
As well as Alderman Scott for helping out.
And Alden, yes, he's our liaison on
I'm
the
here and
council.
you heard all this, you know, ahead of time, what this is about, and for that as well, and selling for the code office, I appreciate that as well, so that's so important. Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody want to make any amendments? Like, take those?
I'm just a little upset about the $400 for the.
No.
Does that mean we're not getting Christmas time this year?
Well, we may have to look at that.
In city part, I might have missed. That one, I think that'll be next year. So I'm hoping there'll be some.
And I spoke offline with a number of the council this year, what you've done for the fire department and me and my staff, the support you've given us, and I'm not just trying to. It's recognized, and I truly appreciate it. It's unwavering, and we appreciate everything you've done. We know that, you know, I come to you and I say, I got a blown up motor, taking care of it. Came to you and said, hey, I have a fire truck. Made it work. I heard there's a lot of things, you know, yeah, I know it's gonna hurt a lot more if we waited. So, but that's the type of stuff that we've talked about, and we made sound decisions. And this group here works hard to do things, and the whole group works hard to be cognizant of fiscal obligations and doing the right thing. The vision's changing, department's changing. Next year it'll be different operation, but we're gonna still do what we have to do. I'm done. Anything else, Chief Katie?
I just would add what we said, it's nice to feel supported. It's that hugely different atmosphere that we get from the administration.
It was long overdue.
Well, I appreciate you guys. It's always easy to do. Sure. And I thank everybody for coming, and thank you for that. So I'll take a motion to accept this budget as presented. Scott, Beckwith, anybody else, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so tomorrow night we have, the other, the rest of them, then I added the SPC, I don't know if that came out.
Yeah.
They have a considerable ask, and I said, you know what, I shouldn't be making that decision. So I said, bring them on as a department. So, but in between that, if you get a chance to look at the other items, like the mayor's budget, they're all pretty basic, pretty simple. I won't drag anybody out longer than we did, including 10 minutes, not bad. But the mayor's budget, the clerk's budget, AJ's budget, what's a little bit in there for AJ to help. So just kind of look at them if there's any, they're pretty simple, but if there's anything on that, we can discuss them more thoroughly if necessary. And then tomorrow night, we'll hopefully close those out. And then. Perfect. I thank you.